Yes, we are.
All right. This is the design committee for the Downtown Development District. Today is Thursday, April 6, 2023. It's 9 a.m. We are in the Hammond City Council chambers. Will you please call roll?
Chris Bankston, Tara Bennett,
Here.
Roy Dufresh,
Here.
Michelle Juneau. Here. Tom Pastorius, Cassie Reagan,
Here.
Jeffrey Smith.
Here.
All right, our first item of business is approval of the minutes from February 2nd, 2023. If anybody has a motion for that one?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Chris Bankston, Tara Bennett,
Yes.
Roy Dufresh.
Yes.
Michelle Juneau,
Yes.
Tom Pastorius, Cassie Reagan,
Abstain.
Jeffrey Smith.
Yes.
Our next item is approval of the minutes from February 17, 2023. I move that we approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Chris Bankston, Tara Bennett,
Yes.
Roy Dufresh,
Yes.
Michelle Juneau,
Yes.
Tom Pastorius, Cassie Reagan,
Yes.
Jeffrey Smith.
Yes.
All right, our first item of new business is discussion of sidewalk reimbursement program. Michelle has put some information in our packet, background, past reimbursements, things that we need to consider, and then some inquiries that we've had for some future. I think we need to, this came up at the board meeting, that we need to have some more definition to this, because we need to have an idea going in what our DDD amount is, reimbursement is going to be. The city also, needs that as well if we're going to keep it a three-way split. You can see what we have done in the past. There's only been 3.
So this is basically all that I could pull from Munis underneath our sidewalk improvements budget item.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I tried also looking at like our past check request and also asked Laura of the other ones, but this is as far as back as we could find.
I know the building where the steakhouse is, didn't that get a sidewalk grant? No?
I got one.
For the Baltel building. Yeah.
That one's on here.
Where am I?
There should be another. Let's see, pull this out. So anyway, one thing that came up with the last one we did was they included design fees, and we have not done that before, but it was approved by the board. So what we've done in the past is just demolition and construction of the sidewalks. We've included the landscape material, plants, trees, sidewalk, the grates for the trees, all that kind of stuff. But we've never done that before. So the board has asked that we take a look at coming up with some, just a better defined, would this actually be the cooperative endeavor that we would outline?
Yeah, so.
If we have a limit and if we have specifically what we're going to cover, if we want to set an allowance, like a square foot allowance, because what we want them to do is what our master plan suggests.
Mm-hmm.
But if they go over and beyond that, are we responsible for paying the over and beyond?
I guess-
Over and beyond B, we did bricks and concrete.
I don't know if they took it
Over
further,
and
if they
Beyond
did.
was the one that we just reimbursed.
Yeah.
Because obviously the design was in a cohesive design with Railroad Park, but that sidewalk in of itself,
Oh, yeah.
Roy, it's the paver style.
Well, we looked at the whole, if you remember the
Right.
master plan, it was kind of the whole block was kind of envisioned as a a little bit different than downtown. And that was why we continued around La Coretta in the way we did.
That was kind of an exception, basically.
Yeah, it really was, yeah.
I think, as you can see here, you know, the costs of the three-way share have ballooned. And so, I sat down with Andre and we talked about this, just to kind of see what was already on the books. And basically, the only written item that relates to the sidewalk reimbursement split between the owner, the city, and the DDD is listed in the UDC for the Thomas More Street Economic Development Overlay District, which Andre had never heard of, and neither did I. So that district is actually defined between Range and Morris. So quite a long spans, but it states that it only is for properties that front Morris or Thomas. So I don't know when this overlay district was made, but basically whenever we were looking at that, I was like, oh, well, I didn't even realize that was there. And I think the sidewalk reimbursement program has been done for, you know, projects that, you know, kind of come down the pipeline. But we haven't had like a process so that all parties are informed about kind of how it works, which is kind of why, well, if you have.
I have a comment on that
Right.
because I've encountered it. I knew about it because it happened years ago. John Dardis was the planner. Put it in place primarily for Seville Plaza to get them to landscape their parking lot. He extended all the way down Morris. I, of course, also building faces that, and so does
Right.
the 200 downtown and Stowa. And when I approached about utilities, I had to pay to tie into the sewer, tear up the street. And we did our building, had to pay for all of that. When I asked Lacey, hey, isn't the city supposed to do this? She said, it said may and not must. And they decided that you have enough money, we're not gonna do it for you. So that, I'd like to see that get fixed, because that's not the essence of the ordinance.
Right.
Did y'all follow that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
follow that, but I think basically we've taken this, what is in the UDC, we've taken this code and for the three-way share for the sidewalk reimbursements, and we've kind of interpreted it in other areas. So La Coretta, for example, the 210 South Cherry, technically that doesn't front Morris or Thomas. So I think if we continue to offer this program, we need to put some parameters around it so that we can budget for it accordingly, because we haven't budgeted for the sidewalk improvement line item since 2011. So we have to do a budget ordinance through city council. It becomes, kind of us budgetarily trying to figure out, our board's kind of blindsided, especially by an astronomical expense such as La Coretta. So I think if we continue to offer this, is it just going to be what the UDC says for the Thomas More Street Economic Development Overlay District? Is it to all properties in the DDD? What are the, eligible expenses? Are we gonna cap the amount? Those are all the things. And then in advance, doing a cooperative endeavor agreement, which you can see a draft here, which Andre kind of put together for us, which is basically on the back end of all the parties agreeing to pay for the funds after construction was already done. That's when a cooperative endeavor agreement would be completed. But it is the better interest for us to have a CEA before construction begins. Because that way we all know that we're all entering into this agreement for the three-way split versus after construction has already happened and they're asking for potentially tens of thousands of dollars.
So we don't have anybody who immediately is looking to do this split with us, right?
Not immediately.
But it could be coming up soon.
Yeah, so basically the list down here, the three projects that are listed down there are the ones that have inquired about it this year. So they
Okay.
more than likely may be taking off sometime this summer, fall, they may be looking for a reimbursement sometime early next year.
Yeah, Manhattan's project will start in, getting ready to start.
Yeah.
But it won't be till July or August or maybe even later before before they do the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Let me comment on the cost changing. You notice that I didn't get very much, you know, in my little Bald Cell project. The main reason is, a lot of these are including the traffic calming measures, where we're pushing the sidewalk out into the parking area, to
Right.
the driving lanes. That, of course, costs a lot more than just redoing the sidewalk in front of your building. I think that's what's driven up the cost on some of these projects. And for instance, Stowa, my project was just one stretch in front of the building, wasn't on Morris, because the city did that on their own. Stowa was two, you know, on the corner, so it was two blocks, I mean, 2.5 blocks. So that affected the cost, and then it had a traffic calming measure. And of course, I think Roy mentioned that the special pavers at La Coretta was a continuation of the park. That's a special condition that,
Right.
you know. But I agree that we should be putting limitations on this concrete and brick, like the standard downtown. 3 grates every 20-something feet, and that's it.
Andre got this, didn't he? For Wells
I think
Fargo?
that- Yes, he did.
So, the opposite corner from Stoa was also a 3-way split.
Yeah,
So we can find, just so we have all the information before the board meeting.
yeah.
But I thought the Krupke building had that
It may be
too.
also, but they don't have the bricks and all that.
Oh, they don't?
No,
No, they don't.
Okay, they don't. Did we do it across the street?
yes, but that was, the city did all
City.
that.
The city did that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's it then. So we don't have to make a decision on this today, but probably at our next meeting, next month, we need to at least have a draft of what we think maybe
An application
an
or just,
an application would look like, if it's an application, or if we're going to cap it at some point. Maybe it's a cap, maybe it's a square foot cap that we update annually based on material costs or something. But, and then I think we need to define, just like Jeffrey said, that it's, you know, materials, landscaping.
I mean, I think too, I mean, we would want to incentivize those traffic calming measures. So we wouldn't necessarily, I guess, knowing that, it's like, I'd rather incentivize traffic calming measures than, no offense to you, Roy, but those fancy pavers, you know, so if we're kind of, if cost kind of plays into all of that, then, you know, just being clear about what we will basically reimburse for and kind of, I mean, I'm sure between maybe even this code in the UDC and our design guidelines in the UDC, there probably is like sidewalk parameters of, you know, 20 trees planted every 20 feet. So
That's-
just pulling that language just so that it's consistent. Yeah, I don't really think it's going to take too long to put something together. I just know we have some inquiries coming up and want to make sure that we're kind of tackling them head on versus on the back end, like
Yeah,
we did.
you have to have an honest owner, right, that doesn't want to, isn't going to give a fake number for the cost of their sidewalks, they can get, you know, more money. So it has to be something that we can analyze that's a legitimate bid in the sidewalk work. So that's, having the cap's going to be tough because, like you said, there's, let's just cost per square foot, right, something like that.
Some kind of per square foot cost that we'll agree to. I think we also need, and the board may input on this more than we will, if there's a cap to the amount. You know, if we decide that annually we do X amount, and if it's 1 project or 3 projects or whatever it ends up being. But I think we all agree this is a good thing, the sidewalk reimbursement, because we get some improved sidewalks, and it's consistent with what's in our master plan, and it's something that we want to see continue.
It's a little
We just
unfair-
don't wanna-
It's a little unfair to ask the owners to pay for traffic calming measures, though, don't you think? That ought to be it's a city initiative.
Well, that may be something that we can talk to the city about and see if that's something that they would, you know, we maybe define who pays a third of what and who pays more of something. It could be separated out, sidewalks and traffic calming measures. Because we've seen downtown that we need them. We've had people hit by cars, we've had cars hit buildings and take out other landscaping.
Just really
You know, this is part of
concerning.
the Complete Street,
Mhm.
initiative that, I think there was a seminar given a while back. The city brought someone in to talk about complete streets, and that's a big issue.
Right.
Slowing down cars, giving people a fighting chance across the street.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that all this is kind of coalescing and coming together with some discussion that we've had about a few intersections for, those doing the curb bump outs. Lacey and I have already met with DOTD about a few of those locations and seeing what would a cost share look like, and just kind of bringing them up to code. Because even some of them, in the intersection, they'll jut pedestrians out in the middle of the intersection, so it's not there's a crosswalk and it doesn't take you into the crosswalk, it juts you out to the middle of the intersection. So anyway, this is all kind of coming together for other discussion that we're having with the city for, kind of pinpointed locations that either they can work a way to fast track and we kind of can tap onto that when they're ready. But certainly it is a discussion kind of with the city, and I think if we kind of put together what we think would be a good idea, we're kind of taking some of the work off of them, and that allows it to kind of move forward a little bit more streamlined.
So I guess if y'all will take this with you, and if you have any comments between now and the next meeting, or any thoughts about it, if you'll send it to Michelle, and maybe we can work up a draft before the next meeting. We can approve that, or, send it to the board for the May meeting. Oh, my God. That's crazy. Okay. So the next item is discussion of meeting day and time. I wanted to discuss this before we even got into this year, but because we moved some meetings around and canceled some meetings, and we never got to do it. We have had people ask why we have the meeting during the day, why don't we have it in the evening? We stream it because people can't make it here. We've had people drop off of the committee because it interferes with business. So I wanted just to put this on here for discussion and see if you guys want to move it. I think Michelle looked at the council calendar, and if we moved it to an evening, it would need to be a Thursday evening.
It could still be the first Thursday of the month, and it could be in the evening. It's available.
It's up to y'all. We don't have to move it.
Just speaking on my behalf, I would not be able to make those meetings.
No evening meetings?
No.
Okay.
I could do Mondays or Tuesdays if it's the evening, but Wednesday through Friday, I would not be
Okay.
available.
So the council meets every other Tuesday, so Tuesday would have to be either the first or the third Tuesday of, just in terms of the space being available.
So they just meet 2 times a month. It's not actually every other week.
Yeah, they meet the second and the fourth Tuesday.
Okay. What do y'all think?
I'm flexible, so that, like if it had to move to a Tuesday. Whatever everyone else is doing.
I'm easy, I'm just whatever y'all want to
Do y'all
Yeah.
prefer morning? Is it better for evening or morning, or?
I mean,
It's-
I think everybody, regardless of what time you're gonna have it, there's gonna be
Mhm.
conflicts. I mean,
Oh,
people
there's
are gonna have
always, yeah.
conflicts, other things come up, so,
And doesn't the historic district also meet in the mornings?
They do.
Mm.
They do.
11.
They meet at 11.
did it meet like around noon or 11?
Mm-hmm.
on Same day as the DDD board meeting?
Well, I mean, we can keep it as is if you guys want to. It's an option.
I say we leave it where it is.
Okay.
Just-
All right.
If somebody needs to say something, I'm gonna say. Just leave it where it is until if it becomes a big problem
Right.
with
Well,
people,
I
then
don't
we
know if anyone had a chance. I
reassess.
know that Chris was sick today, but, Tom is usually here. I don't know by chance, if any of you know if they've expressed anything about the meeting time.
Mm-mm.
Both own their businesses, so.
Yeah.
come and go as they please, I would assume.
Okay, well, we will leave it where it is, and the only other thing we have on the agenda is the director's report.
Yes, I'm trying to find that right now. Right here. I was out of town last week in Boston for a conference, so I'm like trying to get back into the groove of things. I just wanted to give an update about the downtown lighting. So in addition to a legislative session starting on the 10th, which we have that proposal and capital outlay for downtown lighting, we'll just try to keep an eye on that and see if that results in anything this legislative session. Todd DeLon is now on our board, and as you know, he owns Red, White, and Brew. He and I kind of worked with the city a little bit to see, we know that streetlights in downtown have been a big issue. And so there's been this kind of conflict. Does Energy own it? Does the city own it? Who repairs it? How do you report it? All these things. So he went ahead and he looked at a portion of Thomas and Cypress, and he reported all of the lights that were owned by Entergy. And then he reported all of the ones that were not on Entergy's reporting service portal to the city. And I asked him yesterday, and he said that everything is now repaired. So,
Oh, good.
yeah. So, and then Katie, as she's on board now, she works at the brew, and just, I mean, I don't know if you've ever walked over there at night, but what does the light over there look like now?
It looks daylight outside.
Yeah.
Like, when you step outside the brew at nighttime, it's just black, and the other day I was working last week, and it's just like daylight. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. So, so I'm not quite sure if we just like followed the process and that was successful, but he's going to take a look at some other portions on this east side, and then I know there's probably a few west side lights. But if you know of any lights that are out that people have been complaining about for years, it seems like, just let us know, and we reported to the streets department and we reported to Entergy, and they were repaired. So
I have a question
Yeah.
about the lighting project on Thomas. We just need to keep our eyes and ears open about the design part of it. I don't think we've ever seen anything that, I know Chuck is kind of handling it, right?
So from what I asked Lacey about it, basically it's a request for a line item for downtown lighting from the legislature. Now, like the specifications and all those types of things, though, that comes later. So if we were to be awarded funding, that's where all of those design discussions would take place. And I've made sure obviously I haven't spoken to Chuck, but between Lacey and, in some way, shape, or form, they sometimes work with Charles too, know that we want and need to be a part of that discussion, so that we're kind of building it into, it could be a more cohesive plan, if we're focusing on these streetlights, what else does the improvements look like when we're already doing them?
Yeah, exactly.
We had that discussion with her, and she assured us we would be part of
Yeah, that's what,
the planning
my
process.
point was like, we're
We'd have
going to be
input.
tearing up the sidewalks to put lighting in.
Right.
There are other opportunities that may present themselves that we can do some of these sidewalk improvements, possibly,
Yeah.
and do it once and do it right.
Right.
Maybe not do as much, but do the portion we can do right, That was my only question. Thank you.
So our history exhibit project is still moving along. We have, I would say, 5 out of 7 drafts developed for our panels. We are going to be meeting after Easter, and this will have to be a major project focus for the month of May, for the end of April, May, and June, because we are in a timeline to have our funds spent by August. So just want to keep everyone informed about that.
I would mention that, just so the design committee knows where we're going, and I imagine we would probably we'll probably show this committee
Yes.
the mock-ups
So
once we have them done.
I'm hoping we'll have the drafts of the narratives complete by our April board meeting, just so that the board can kind of take a look at everything. I know that well, in the past, it's been expressed, we want to be, we had issues with the mural. We don't want anything controversial kind of in these things, but just so that the board can kind of take a look at it with that reassurance, and then we would kind of move from there and then do a huge kind of, exhibition almost of the panels in May.
Yeah.
So
And
the design
I would just
committee-
add to that, just so the committee knows, I met with Antoine, the people at Antoine, they did the graphics and all for the park. And we had kind of talked, as our history committee talked, and I felt like it was important to keep them on board. And so we've got a proposal from them that Michelle has. They will do the mock-ups. They will do the actual print mock-ups with the photos and the text. And provide our sign people with camera-ready artwork. So, so you'll be able to see that at some point down the road, probably. It's about a 6-week production time on the high-pressure laminate panels that will be used in the park. So somewhere July, maybe, we will have hopefully the final artwork mock-ups done by them, and we'll, I'm sure, show you and the design, the board, and everybody that's has concerns about it. So that was just a little
Yeah.
information I'll throw out there.
So it's moving along, and I'm like, feel really, I did 2 of the panels the other day, and I was like, well, it's kind of fun to do them. It kind of feels like a fun history class, but it is work, so it's kind of hard to get to, but it's moving along. The next thing is some information on tax credits. So Heather and, well, I guess earlier this year, we kind of brought in the Main Street program and Amanda Lanata with the CLG program with the state. She kind of, it was more or less a training for the historic district, but we kind of realized out of that some additional information on tax credits would be helpful. So the idea is that we would kind of do a session and invite property owners and others who are kind of, just kind of do a targeted outreach to them so they're informed about how the tax credit incentives work. I know basically nothing about how they actually work and how to help a property owner along the process, and kind of Heather's in the same boat. So it would be helpful just to kind of, for us to know how can we really support our property owners by maximizing this benefit. Because if they're in the historic district, they can get the federal tax credits and the state. If they're in the DDD though, since we're a cultural district, they can actually get the 20% state tax credits. So I know Jeffrey, you've used them, and we just want to make sure that folks are getting the information.
I can certainly help you with that. I'm
Yeah.
very knowledgeable on the whole deal.
Yeah.
Not just for myself, but for clients.
Right, yeah. And so I think you've done a great job. And I actually, this Main Street program kind of put together this one pager, which you can kind of see up there, for historic preservation incentives, grants, and abatements. So stuff at the state level, federal, and, we, looking through the UDC, actually saw that there's quite a few different abatement procedures, but I don't know.
Abatement's the one that's fallen through the cracks.
Right. I didn't know what the status of that was. So, but everyone who I know is, like Matthew Hunt, for example, I sent this to him just so he was kind of informed about it and kind of keeping him up to date with some of the grants that are open right now. The Paul Brune grant is open, which is $55,000 grant for building restoration, requires a $10,000 match. And so the projects that rank highest to receive that award are ones that are currently vacant and underutilized and put them into productive use, so income
Just,
producing.
I got that grant twice, 10 grand,
Nice.
for Ritz and for Balsa.
Nice.
And I'm asking Matt to apply for his project too.
Yeah,
Hopefully he can get it as well.
yeah. So the hope, I think, is some of these properties that have been sitting around, that we maybe just bundle it all together and maybe not do the work for them, but just really kind of inform them of the resources that are there. So this is a great resource that they've kind of put together, and I'll just keep everyone in the loop about a meeting for tax credits whenever that kind of gets developed out.
Yeah, Michelle, just to say, that what would be helpful for property owners that come to see you about their properties is to have some type of brochure that you print up that states all these things on it.
Yeah, that's what this one pager kind of does up here.
That's something you can hand out to.
Yeah.
Copy. Excellent.
And the last thing is budgeting, just kind of have this all grouped here for items that are related to the design committee in some way. I met with Evan on Monday, and we've got some work to do with the budget. It's kind of all over the place, but we are following the city's budgeting procedures and on their timeline this year. So we'll have a confirmed budget sooner. Actually, we'll be on our April agenda to look at a proposed budget. And so all of these, items related to sidewalks, perhaps lighting or other, the welcome sign, the history exhibit, all those types of things are what we're thinking about when we're planning this upcoming budget for the 2024 fiscal year.
So, Michelle, you'll be at the city budgeting committee meetings? You attend those?
Yes. The budget work session doesn't happen until like the first week of June, but they want drafts to council for their first May meeting, I think. So we're trying to follow that.
That's when you beg for money.
Well, we don't need to really beg for money.
Well, we're leveraging our dollars and we're taxing ourselves to the
Right.
city. I don't think that DDD, you can spend your own money, we'll spend it
Right.
elsewhere.
I think this fiscal year, we kind of got to like streamline and like level things out a little bit. And then I think upcoming, that's where we can kind of leverage a little bit more. So that's a part of the strategy. But I think we'll certainly get there, especially with some of these intersections, all these other discussions that we've had. They haven't been like concrete enough for us to, develop a project out, but I think we'll get there.
Any other questions?
I have
Yeah,
three
okay.
comments, I'm sorry. The first one is exactly what I thought would happen has happened. Our cypress trees have been topped all down Cage Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't be more pissed off about that. The city just gets into G and starts cutting trees to get out of the way of the power lines. Of course, we all want to have our power, right? But there's got to be some middle ground here. And again, I think I mentioned this years ago, knowing those trees are going to get big and the energy's going to top them. So, boy, I don't know, do we go to topiary now and start making the trees look like, Lady and the Tramp or something? Or do we just, ugly by our trees?
I hadn't even noticed, I hadn't looked at it yet. I'll ride by there when
The one on the corner of Kate and Thomas,
I'm sorry?
the one on,
Stop it.
yeah, they just topped it.
Even within the DDD and other areas, like down this street, they brutalized a live oak tree. Now, it's supposed to be limbing these trees in an artful way. It's supposed to be what happens, but I didn't see any artists on that rig cutting those trees. They were just butchers. And, I don't know, the city didn't even make you aware, I'm sure, that they were limiting.
Yeah, and I was out of town last week.
Entergy sent out text messages over the last 2 weeks that they would be cutting trees in Hammond.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, this was Entergy.
I didn't get that message.
They've been all over town for the last couple of weeks.
So anyway, I don't know where we go from here, but we've got to get something. If we're going to continue to use urban landscaping, we need to do it in conjunction with our power poles.
Roy, are there any recommendations for trimming trees around power lines?
Move the power lines, maybe. That's not gonna happen.
Well, what I talked about was, they've got these bundles now where they take
Yeah.
the three primaries and they bundle them into a triangle, and it's with an insulated wire, so it can tolerate trees better. That's something should we go,
Mhm.
you just have to have someone, have to have a champion that's willing to go to the Entergy and say, stop brutalizing our trees, what can we do? I don't know, just, or don't plant trees under power lines, trees that are gonna get big.
Yeah.
And maybe that was our mistake, is encouraging the cypress trees, not realizing. Now, one thing that did happen, when we when you look at the master plan, initial master plan, it said widen Kate Street.
Mhm.
When Chuck designed it, he didn't widen it as far as we had hoped it would.
Yeah.
So if he had pushed it further out, the trees would have been further away from the power lines, but he didn't do it that way. Anyway, water's over the dam, but I don't know what to do going forward. It's not gonna be a pretty tree with the tops cut out of them. I don't know what's gonna happen going forward. Anyway, second item I have is, you mentioned Todd DeLong going and checking for lights. You know, that's one of my pet peeves, is that a DDD staff member should be on the beat, walking and seeing those things and notifying the city. So I would encourage you to try to find a helper with, under your direction, that would do this either weekly, monthly, quarterly, somebody that, dead tree, lights out, something else that's wrong.
Just, Michelle has been on her own until Katie started a couple of weeks ago, and their plates are overfull. She's trying to find somebody to run the farmer's market right now. When that happens, then that may free up some time, but they are spending way more hours doing their work than they're being paid for at this point. In
appreciate
the
that.
future, I think that's a great idea, but I'm just letting you know, these two ladies are overwhelmed at the moment. But let's put that on the list, and
Yeah,
maybe.
well, one thing I'll just say is I walk my dogs and my son in downtown every evening. So whenever I see something, I take a picture of it and I send it to the appropriate department head. So I try to just work it in, and I'm very cognizant of that now. But you know, that is something that we'll try to work on.
I'm not casting aspersions here, I'm just, making a recommendation.
Right, yeah.
Whenever the funding or the workforce is in place, this is critical to what the success we've had. One last item, this is very, very minor, but I was walking past your office. Across the street, Thomas Street, there's a sign that shows the locations of significant buildings in the district. The sign I'm talking
wayfinding?
about? Yeah, the wayfinding sign. We need a couple of more screws in there, if you notice it, with the plastic sheet bowing way
bubbling, yeah.
out. So that needs a little, I don't know the sign, what sign maker you use, but it could use a little.
Yeah, it was ASI, and, Roy actually met with them for something else, and I wasn't too happy with the end result of
Yeah.
that, because, the vinyl that's on the plexiglass, it's shrinking in, so. It was installed less than a year ago, so I may just,
Call it a warranty item and tell them to come fix it.
Call
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I don't mind bashing them for you if you need some help. Don't laugh, Kathy.
Just so you know, Jeffrey, I did bring up the trees by the Baltell building to Whitney, so it is on their docket. They were getting ready for the Cleanest City. Well, we did, I guess, enter into the next round of the Cleanest City, so the final, I really don't know what they do, but the final view of the city will be sometime at the end of April.
The state, yeah, she said we won, we had the highest score in the state
For a
for the preliminary thing, and then the state judging is coming up, but the date hasn't been determined.
I'm starting to like the dead tree now, so I don't know.
well, give it a name and put a badge on it.
Hang some Easter eggs on it, decorate it seasonally. All right, any more questions, comments? Okay, we're adjourned.